This example inspired me to think about orthodontists and their receptionists. Let's say that we had a chance to make an adjustment to the basic structure, minimum wage, price caps, health insurance, something, right? Some kind of very basic policy. And suppose that it turned out that pretty much the only people affected were orthodontists and their receptionists. Okay, it's a little far-fetched, but we could imagine that either that's true or that it's something very similar in every other case. Okay. Now let's look at what each of these two options would do. Particularly, let's look at what opportunities and choices they would leave open for orthodontists and their receptionists. Right. So option A. Well, in terms of number of hours worked and income, the orthodontists would have two options. They could work about 40 hours a week on average. Right? Let's assume they get a couple weeks of vacation a year. And they make about $40,000 a year. But if they were willing to put in an extra 10 hours and work 50 hours a week, then they'd be likely to make $50,000 a year. Right? So they have a choice, right? Extra time means extra money, but only a certain amount. Okay, so 10 extra hours a week means about $50,000 extra. Now, what does option A do for the receptionists? Well, the receptionists under this scheme would probably make, on average, about $21,000 a year, and they would have a 3-day work week, right? Which I guess means you'd have to have multiple receptionists, right? Or if it's Saturday, 2 receptionists, right? In some ways, a pretty good deal, right? Now, the receptionist might have other options out there besides being a receptionist or besides being an orthodontist receptionist. But if they really wanted more time to spend on other things and were willing to accept less money, they'd get it. Right? Now, let's look at what would happen on option B. If we went with option B, 40 hours a week would still be about $40,000 for the orthodontist. But on option B, if they choose to put in that extra 10 hours a week on average, they're actually going to get up to about $60,000 a year. Okay, there'll some be an additional benefit or synergy or something like that, right? So it'll be even more. But on option B, right, we would expect that the receptionists will still have the option of a 3-day work week, but they'd only make about $18,000 on that 3-day work week. Well, what would the difference principle tell us? If this is all that's at stake, or if everything else at stake is identical to this, it's pretty clear that the difference principle tells us we have to choose option A. Why is that? It's because option A is the one that maximizes the level of the least well off. But notice here, right, we might assume that the receptionist could have taken another job with a 5-day work week, right? But chose to have less work and less money. Nevertheless, even though, right, option A means a little more for the person who works less hard and less for the person who works harder compared to option B, the difference principle still tells us to choose option A. At least it tells us to choose option A if both options involve fair and equal opportunity, right, and liberty. So a lot of people are going to say that's wrong, right? If we look at these two options, on grounds of moral desert, we ought to prefer option B. Right? If we have a choice between an option that allows those who don't want to work as hard to get more, right, that in a sense rewards those who don't work as hard, right, or an option that rewards those who do choose to work harder, well, we should go with the one that rewards those who do choose to work harder. Right? So that seems to be a problem with the difference principle. Even if we agreed that it should be blind to talent, it seems like it shouldn't be blind to hard work, or at least that's what a lot of people are going to say in response to Rawls.